Bradley Sowash back here, and today's subject is about modulation, how to change keys. I want to just touch on a touch of theory, which is, what does the word tonic mean? Tonic defines the key. Tonic makes the tune sound home. So just a little bit of theory. If we're in C major and I play a C chord, then you're going to hear, a tonic note or a home note or a done note, and we can also say the done chord. And the word tonicization is when you make that the new tonal center, you make that the new key. So if you're playing in C and you move to the new key of, say, G, you've tonicized G. And one other tiny bit of theory you have to know is that a 5/7 is the 5th chord of the scale. So C, D minor, E minor, F, G, we call that G7. And you hear its restlessness. That's the 5/7 chord, also called dominant chord. It has this restless quality that makes it want to resolve to the tonic. So with just that little bit of theory of knowing that the 1 chord and 1 note are tonic or home, and the 5 chord is an unstable sound that pushes home, you can exploit that to change keys. And I'm going to share with you 5 ways to do that. Ready? 5 ways to modulate. 5 ways to get from one key to another. The first one is just do it. I'm using that Nike comment, so just do it. Some people call this the direct modulation. Depending on the key you're moving to, it's effective sometimes to just bump right into it. So let me just see if I can come up with an example of that. So I just started again. I played it in C, and then I started it again in D. I just jumped there. And that particular modulation, a whole or half step above the key you started in, works very well for just jumping into it. It works even better when there's a nice pickup note, because that kind of leads our ear into it. So let me give you an example of that. Let's say we're doing When the Saints Go Marching In. That's dee da da, and that was in, again, from C to D major. I took the opening pickup notes, played them in the new key, and we just had a direct jump to that. So we could do that with a whole step, C to D, or it also works pretty well with a half step. It's a little funny to my ear, but C major, D flat. To me, maybe I've just heard too many transitions from a whole step or a modulation to a whole step, but it gives me a sense that it's sort of half done there. So one way to change keys, and I've got my keys here, is to change from your home key, your original key, to a whole step above it. All right, so we've changed keys. Kind of corny, isn't it? I'm a corny guy. So, all right, that's the direct way to do it. And a little tip on that, sometimes it's helpful to vamp on the new key that you're about to go into. In other words, rather than going straight to the melody, go ahead and just play the tonic chord or a little riff or whatever it is that it's inherent to the tune to set the ear up for its new key. Right? And so let's get to the end of that, where the tune, one of the things that makes that tune exciting is it keeps changing, keeps going up. And there's a little principle there. If you want to add energy, it's better to transpose up than down. So what happens in there, we get down to the end. Happens. We go up a step, just vamping. Now our ear is ready. So there was no modulation there. And we just did that direct or just do it approach, but we did just do a little vamping to sort of cushion the blow, if you will. Some people think that it's okay to do a jump a minor third up. So that would be C to E flat. Let's see if we agree with that. C major. E flat. Some people feel like that's an acceptable jump. To me, it feels a little bit abrupt. I would probably like to smooth that out with some of these other techniques, but there it is. It's all a matter of your own taste and your own, you know, interest in what grabs your ear, because that's the beauty of making your own music. So the first one we did, simplest, is just do it. The next one, and I'm moving from simpler to a little bit more complicated, none of these are difficult, is to change modality. Change modality. Okay, so what does that mean? I always joke about that anybody who is talking about music theory always uses big words because it helps them get tenure in their music schools and the university. So change modality simply means to go from major to minor, or happy to sad, if you will. If we were playing in C major and we went to C minor, that would be an example of changing modality. We didn't really change to any relative keys or anything, we just changed C to C minor. Would become this. Okay, so you may laugh at that, like who would do that? But actually, listen to this. I'm going to pull it up on my screen here. Listen to this. This is the traditional way that the famous old song that everybody hates, You Go Tell Aunt Rhody, which I remember living across from an elementary school for several years. We would hear this along with Polly Wolly Doodle in the fall. And it just kind of drove me crazy to hear that on the beginning instruments, though. Bless their hearts for learning music. So there's a second half to Go Tell Aunt Rhody that is maybe not as known. So here's the part we're familiar with. Go tell Aunt Rhody, go tell Aunt Rhody, go tell Aunt Rhody, old Grey Goose is dead. And then that's pretty much repeats. The one that she was saving, the one that she was saving, the one that she was saving to make a feather bed. Now, what happens? That's usually where we stop. But the original traditional tune gets minor there. She died in the pond, she died in the mill pond, she died in the pond, and a standing on her head. And then back to major. Go tell Aunt Rhody. Now, I suspect that was for humorous effect back in the day. But it's an example of a song that was in D major, and the melody just suddenly becomes D minor. It didn't take much of a preparation. Although it does take a kind of a conclusion. Hit that final D chord and restart. So we've hit two so far. One is to do a direct change. Just go to your new key. The new one we just did was change modality. I'm going to show you 5 total today. The third one is probably the most common, and it involves an idea of pivot chords. So pivot modulations end on the 5/7 of the new key. So if you missed the beginning of this video, you might want to go back and review that if you're not sure what a 5/7 chord is. But here's the trick. Most modulations that are not direct, like we've discussed, but are actually modulating, actually involve some movement. What they do is play the 5/7 of the new key. Let that burn in. You play the 5/7 of the key you want to go to before you go there. You know this Bach minuet. So it's solidly in G minor. You can hear it still very G minor, still very home, that minor sound. And here's some, now it starts to change. F, B flat. So that F chord, the 5 chord of the key of B flat, preceding that shift to the B flat relative major, made it work. And then we go on to the relative major for a while. You can hear the box shifting here. We just had a D7 chord. D7 is the 5 chord of G minor. it's all about sort of either overtly or sneakily slipping in the 5 chord of the key you want to modulate to. And in this case, we went from G minor to the relative major of B flat. And in each case, Bach gave us the 5 chord of where he was going to land. This is not just a Baroque or classical thing. You hear this all the time in other tunes. One of the ones I thought of was Blue Skies. It starts in A minor, okay? And it actually is going to modulate to its relative major. So think to yourself, what's the relative major of A minor? What other key has mostly white keys? And that's C major. A minor. Now here's where we modulate. Listen how it's moving, and then we hear that G. Here's the G7. We landed in C in just a few measures, but it repeats. How are we going to get back to A minor? What is the 5 chord of A minor? A, B, C, D, E. It's E7. And that sets us up to repeat in A minor. G7. And now he stays in C a while, Irving Berlin. Got to get back to A minor. How are we going to do it? I hope you're already thinking. Get to the 5 chord of A minor, E7. That's just what he does. And that brings us home to A minor. Here's another one. Ellington's It Don't Mean a Thing If It Ain't Got That Swing. D minor. At least that's where I'm playing it. Wow, we just landed an F. How do you suppose he did that? Well, he modulated by sneaking in a C7, a pivot chord, and that led our ear to F. But we got to get back, so a quick 5 of D minor, which is A7. There it is, A7. We just got to a new key. We just landed in B flat. How did he do that? He led us there through the 5 of B flat, the F7. So a lot of tunes do this, or even have a series of them. Now, I don't want to drive this into the ground and overwhelm us, but just a way to soften that change. When it sounds clunky to have that 5-7 of the new key coming in, precede it with what is called a dominant preparation. Basically, the 4 or 2 of the new key. So let's look at this again. Blue skies, headed to C. Here's the 2 chord in the key of C, D minor, and then G7. And to get home, the 2 chord in the key of A minor, and then the 5 chord. So we have that sort of smoother way to get to the 5 chord by putting the 4 or 2 chord of the coming key before it. So we can make a little formula here. I just thought of this. So let's just call this key key 1. Let's call it key circle, just to make it general. We want to get from key circle to key triangle, just to make it super abstract. How are we going to get there? We precede it with the 5 chord of triangle. We somehow in this key find our way there, and if it's too clunky, we put either a 2 or a 4 chord before that to smooth the way. So that's called a pivot chord. So we've hit 3 so far, and they were Just Do It, I called it, change modality, and pivot chords. And number 4 is to do it gradually. And this one is a little bit more complicated. This is when you prepare the ear for the new key by introducing elements of the coming key signature, and you trick or confuse the listener into feeling like things might be changing, but it's so smooth you can hardly tell. And then suddenly we're in a new key, and it all felt seamless, and we've gotten past what has been called the tyranny of the key signature. For composers, it's easy to get stuck in that same 7 chords that are available to us in a key, and this is the way the masters broke out of that they begin to introduce notes from other keys in the melodic line, and it leads our ears there. And it's a little trickier to pull off, but I thought you'd be interested in seeing how that works. So I'm going to show you a couple of masterful examples of that. By the way, you might be interested in to see the condition of my Easy Classics to Moderns book that I think I got in high school and played in millions of ballet classes and through college and did analysis. This thing is a nice little collection of easy classic tunes, classical, although easy and classical doesn't mean the same as easy in education. So everybody, I think, knows the, oh, actually, I want to use that book, the Clementi Sonatina, the shortest sonatina in the world, right? Let's just look at this. We all know this. He's in C major. And part of the sonata form is to arrive in the second half of the beginning. Let's not even label these things in the key that is a fifth above. So he already knew writing this that he would start in C, and then he had to get ourselves to G. So what note is in G major that is not in C major? Okay? Think to yourself, what is it? F sharp. F sharp is not in C. It's in G. And so he begins introducing F sharp. So let's check this out. So all white keys, totally C major. F sharp. That was it. We're now in G major. And then just to reinforce it, he plays a lot of 5/1s or Ds and Gs. I put a boogie ending on there because I'm a jerk. So he's introduced that F sharp, and it got us leaning into the new key, and we sort of found ourselves in G. Let's listen to how Mozart does it. C major. So we're still in C major, and everything's white keys and so on. Not a black key yet. Not a nary a black key. What happens here? A C sharp? What's that doing? False alarm, we're back to C. F sharp. And now we're in G. That was the modulation. We barely even heard it. As if to emphasize it, right? So why was the C sharp there? He went beyond G. What modulated from C to G, but he took a note from D, kind of to get our ear even more off center, and we're confused. And then when he hit the F sharp, it almost felt like a relief coming back from the C sharp, and now we're in G. So the big lesson is that he just introduces notes from the key he wants to be in the melodic line, and then that leads us there. So I call that gradual modulation. My fifth of 5 modulation techniques is sequencing the melody and the chords through several keys. Sequencing the melody. Sequence means to play the same pattern moving around, such as EDC. EDC, you know, playing a little pattern that moves. It could be any pattern you like. Maybe C, A, G. C, A, G. Let's move that around. Okay, so we can use the idea of sequencing both the melody and the chords to arrive in a new key. So right here. Now, we're ready for it to go on, but let's move it up. By taking just a little portion of the melody and lifting it up and moving it as you move along. Let's try it from the beginning. I haven't even tried this. So we just took some little piece of the melody, sequenced it, and used same chord quality, major chords in this case, and the same melody, and moved it around until we got to where we wanted to be with our new key. That's kind of a micro example. You probably want to be a little smoother about it, take a longer sequence, but it's a way to arch out of the key that you feel trapped in. So the bonus trick is this great chord called the pop dominant chord. A pop dominant chord is another way to change keys. I can change to any key. Look, I have all these keys I can change. Corny. Okay. So we want to go to a pop dominant chord. And what you do is kind of based on the same thing about playing the 5 of the new key. But it's kind of a more recent, I associate it with Broadway, like more recent Broadway pieces such as Rent or Last 5 Years, or so this more contemporary Broadway sound. So let's say we're in the key of C. And you could literally go anywhere with this if you're playing in this sort of contemporary style. It's not going to work on a Mozarty piece. And we might have chords in here like add 2 or more of a rich sound like C, D, E, G. You play in that kind of environment. And we want to get to a new key. Literally, you can pick any key. Like, let's say we want to go to, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something a little less obvious. Let's go to A major. We want to go to A major. That's our target. So what you do is you think about what is the 5 of A major. So far, this is the same. And so we're going to have this 5 chord here, except that's a bass note. And on top of that bass note is going to be the 4 chord. So this is the 4 of the coming key, and this is the 5 note. This is a single note. This is a chord. And so let's just take a look at that. We're in C. Maybe we haven't add 2, whatever. This is just a chord that's in our key of C. We plop in a D over E, and it sets our ear up for A major. So let's hear that. Let's pretend we're doing a Broadway twinkle. Now, D over E. You could literally go anywhere with this as long as you're in a kind of contemporary environment. I'll do one more. I'm in the key of C, and I want to get to E flat. So I ask myself, what is the 5 of E flat? That's B flat, E flat, G, A flat, B flat, and the 4 chord is A flat. So I'll play a right hand 4 chord on the 4, A flat, and a left hand root on the 5. I'm going to go to E flat, so I play A flat chord over B flat. Get the idea. So that's just a really neat trick. It doesn't work for every style, of course, because you want to, have your modulations be consistent with the character of the tune you're modulating on. Here's my theme song. Until next time, enjoy your creative music making journey.